Please stand as I invite Tommy Times to the podium to offer the invitation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we give thanks for this meal and many other blessings and gifts that you bestowed upon each of us. We pray that we'd be faithful stewards of your gifts and our service to you and others. We're especially thankful for the grace and mercy you shower upon our country and for the many freedoms we enjoy. May we never take them for granted. And may we always place our hope and trust in you. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for the invitation. I'd now like to invite Club Secretary J.W. Carpenter to the podium for announcements and introduction of guests. J.W.
Thank you, Scott. Nice big crowd today, which is fitting given the quality of our speaker. Very excited to welcome you back after a week off for spring break. I hope everyone can get behind Boston College alum Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers in the Final Four. Really excited. Obviously, I'm focused on the Boston College part, but there's a lot of folks focused on the Auburn part too. So let's take a second to celebrate a guy who has done a lot for this club. We've got some great national recognition. Is Jake here? Jake, how many times has Jake gotten us a great speaker? If you've ever been to Alabama Bushford, you know it's a terrific place, and the USA Today recognized it as the most underrated travel destination in Alabama. So let's give a round of applause. And speaking of books, Larry, are you here? Well, I'll celebrate you anyway. He's probably out promoting his book. As you all know, Larry Thornton, his book became live, I believe, yesterday. There are some dates for some upcoming appearances, but let's all go out and buy and read this book, just if for no other reason than we wanted to sell more copies than Jim Knowles' book. So obviously, we are still, folks down in Lee County are still recovering and will be recovering for a while from this just awful tragedy down there. We at Kiwanis want to make sure we're always stepping up, even though it's outside our geographic area. They are near and dear to our hearts. So Kiwanis is going to match up to $10,000, and that will go directly to families with children who were impacted by the tornadoes, so keeping on our mission. There's a link right there. Thanks to Drew Langlow and John Martin and the United Way for making this really easy. You can just go right on the interweb on your space phone and click, and it's really simple to give. But let's make sure that we make our club spend all $10,000 to help those folks back in the county. Happy birthday, belated birthday to our president, Scott Adams, who is, mild and appropriate level of enthusiasm for that. Just want to wish him a happy birthday. So we always refer to our new members as the lifeblood of the club. I think of our guests as the plasma of the club. And we have tons of great guests this week, so we're not going to introduce everyone by name, but I do want to recognize the great folks who are representing the BBA today, and of course all of the great employees from Ebsco who are here with our speaker. But if you are a guest or you are the host of a guest, if you could please stand up so we can recognize you and give you a round of applause. With that, I turn it back over to President Scott.
Thank you, JW, and the rousing birthday greetings. Thank you. And welcome back. Yeah, and wow, it really is great to be talking about college basketball in April in the state of Alabama. That's really cool. So congrats to the Auburn Tigers for making the Final Four. And Kip Porter, congrats to the UVA Cavaliers. Your coaching, your tips really made a difference. So we're looking forward to that game on Saturday, right? Who are you picking? Yeah, okay, I got it. The Texas Tech, I got it. All right, anyway, fun weekend ahead. And really appreciate David Walker joining us to speak today. Again, certainly another one of those iconic Alabama and Birmingham companies. I think it tends to fly under the radar because y'all are so far out there on 280, so we're really happy to have you here today. Obviously, the turnout is reflective of that. And yes, we have 2 new member introductions today as well, which is fantastic, and they are the lifeblood of the club. So I'd now like to call, who's going first? Brad? Brad Baker first to introduce Brandon Essig. Brad?
Thank you, President Scott. My fellow Kiwanis and guests, on behalf of co-sponsors Lee Hollis, Andrew Nix, I am pleased to introduce Brandon Essig as the newest member to the world's oldest and largest Kiwanis Club. Brandon is an attorney and partner at Lightfoot, Franco & White, where he specializes in white-collar criminal defense, corporate investigations, NCAA compliance, among other areas. He has tried dozens of high-profile jury cases in both state and federal court, representing individuals, corporations, colleges, and universities. He has authored papers on issues related to law enforcement and NCAA compliance, and he has spoken publicly many times on these topics. Before joining Lightfoot, Brandon served as a captain in the U.S. Marine Corps. While serving in the Corps, he was a lawyer in an infantry unit, during which time he deployed for 7 months to Fallujah, Iraq. While in Fallujah, he took part in foot patrols and interacted with local, tribal, political, and military leaders while conducting investigations in what is without a doubt one of the most challenging environments on the planet. After his service in the Marine Corps, he worked 8 years for the Department of Justice. While serving as a federal prosecutor, Brandon led an investigation of an international rhino poaching crime syndicate conducted in concert with the DOJ's Environmental Crimes Section. As part of the investigation, he traveled to South Africa to work closely with the DOJ's Office of International Affairs and the State Department, resulting in 2 guilty pleas of professional hunters and the indictments of 2 South African nationals. Brandon is a graduate of the University of West Alabama, where he is a 2-time academic all-conference tight end. He's also a graduate of the University of Alabama School of Law, where he earned the George Peach Taylor Excellence in Trial Advocacy Award. In 2017, the Birmingham Business Journal recognized Brandon as a veteran of influence. He and his wife Ashley have 3 young children and are members at the Advent. Also, for those of you who are on Twitter, he's a great follow, @Brandon_Essig. I've known Brandon for nearly 20 years, and we were law school classmates together, and I can say with absolute certainty that the Kiwanis Club is today greater because of his inclusion, and I look forward to his leadership and service to the club. So I'd like to please join me in welcoming Brandon Essig to our newest member.
Okay, Kate Cotton, you're up. Asked to introduce Ashley Water. Kate.
Thank you, President Scott. On behalf of Bob Battle, J.W. Carpenter, and me, after attending several times as a guest, I'm honored to introduce Ashley Watley as our newest Kiwanis member. Ashley was born and raised in Montgomery and graduated from Auburn with a Bachelor of Arts in Communications. Afterwards, she worked with the Auburn University Foundation in major gifts development, working and meeting strategic alumni throughout the country. She returned to Montgomery and served as an admissions counselor and recruiter for Huntington College until joining Leadership Alabama in December 2007. During her tenure at Leadership Alabama, she has been the point person for all things related to the organization, and she is known and beloved throughout the state. Currently, she serves as Director of Membership, including engagement and networking initiatives, and the Director of Leadership Alabama's Alabama Leadership Initiative, our exciting and challenging program for emerging community professionals aged 25 to 40. She and her family recently moved to Homewood, and they have thoroughly enjoyed settling into their new community. She is already involved with Edgewood Elementary's parent organization, her church, St. Mary's Episcopal, and the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama's Roundtable for Young Professionals. She has a son, Tripp, age 11, and a daughter, Lexi, age 7, and she enjoys volunteering in their activities, cooking new recipes, watching football, and more recently, basketball, and spending time with her extended family at Lake Martin. She is folding into Birmingham and our community very quickly, and I know she'll be an excellent, engaged member of this esteemed club. Please welcome Ashley Watley to Kiwanis.
All right, Brandon and Ashley, welcome. Glad to have you here. Hopefully we can get you engaged in one of our committees quickly so you can get fully assimilated to the Kiwanis Club. All right, so let's get the introduction of the head table and get to the program, because that's why you're here. All right, Brad Baker, financial advisor, Morgan Stanley. Brad also has a brother, Will, and father, Alan, who are also members, so this is a real family affair. Kiwanis since 2016. Brandon Essig, who you just heard introduced by Brad, new member. Kate Cotton, Executive Director, Leadership Alabama, Kiwanis since 2006. Ashley Watley, new member, just introduced by Kate. J.W. Carpenter, Executive Director, Birmingham Education Foundation, Kiwanis since 2013. Tommy Times, Tommy, thanks again for that invitation. Financial Risk Consultant with Elliott Davis, Kiwanis since 2016. And finally, Bowen Thaggart, VP Operations, Ebsco Industries, Kiwanis since 2016. Bowen has the honor of introducing our speaker today. Please join me in recognizing the head table.
Thank you, Scott. Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, David Walker, who is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Ebsco, a Birmingham-based global conglomerate with 5,400 employees across 20 countries, 18 business units, and annual revenue of $2.8 billion. We are excited to have David share with us his philosophy of leadership through action. With most organizations in a constant state of change, David believes leaders must be responsive and adaptive to changing conditions in order to thrive and grow. He will share with us how he is establishing a clear vision of where Ebsco, who is celebrating its 75th anniversary this year, is going and taking the actions necessary to transform that vision into reality. David is a graduate of Auburn University, where he earned a BS in accounting. He started his career as a CPA with Ernst & Young and later worked for PJ America as Vice President and Corporate Controller until joining Ebsco Industries in 2000. During his 19 years at Ebsco, David has served in a variety of leadership roles, including Vice President of Acquisitions, Chief Financial Officer, and Chief Operating Officer prior to becoming CEO in 2017. David is active in community affairs and currently serves on the boards of Auburn University, Harvard College of Business, Junior Achievement, City of Vestavia Hills Mayor Financial Advisory Committee, the Distribution Point, and the McKinney Capital. He is also part of the current class of Leadership Alabama. David is an outdoor enthusiast, avid reader, and enjoys travel with his wife, Lindy, and their 3 children. Please join me in welcoming David Walker.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be with you today. I debated whether to tell this story, but I decided I would, so if you'll bear with me. I was speaking to a group about this size several years ago. My youngest daughter is 16 now. She was 11 or 12 at the time. We were getting ready for school that day, and we were having our niceties, and I was asking her what her plans were for the day, and she was sharing a little bit about what her day looked like, and she said, "Well, Dad, what are you doing today?" And being surprised that she took interest in my day, I said, "Well, I'm actually speaking at a lunch today." And she said, "Well, what will you be talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'll be talking a little bit about Ebsco and the things that we do." And she said, "Well, how many people will be there?" And I said, "Well, there'll probably be 100 to 150 people at this event." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes," sensing that she was impressed. I said, "Well, maybe even 150 to 200. And she looked at me and she sort of had a strange look on her face. And I said, "Why are you looking at me that way?" She said, "Do they know you're speaking?" So I drove her to school today, and I was reflecting on the fact that she had told me that and that I was speaking again today, and she said, "Well, I still believe it." So she she's 16, things didn't change. But it is an honor to be with you today. I have admired what this club has done, recognizing you're the oldest and largest Kiwanis club in the world. It's a real privilege to be with you today. I appreciate the work that you do in our community and for the youth that you serve. And as I'll share in some of my comments, we share some of the same commitments at Ebsco as you do in this club. I think JW used the word great earlier in his comments, and I love the saying that great companies have great team members, and I'm very fortunate to have great team members at Ebsco. And many of those are here today, and I'd like to ask them to stand again just so that you're familiar with who is with Ebsco, and I encourage you to speak to them after the presentation. So I'd like to extend that saying by saying great family companies have great families, and we are very fortunate to have the families that we have behind Ebsco. We're also fortunate today to have a member of that family with us, Jason Comer, so I'd like to recognize him if you would mind standing. Thank you. So as we get started, I wanted to share, and it was mentioned by Bowen, that we are in our 75th year in 2019. Many of you are aware that our company was founded by Elton B. Stevens and his wife Alice in 1944. You're probably also aware that we're very misunderstood and sometimes even mispronounced in terms of how people say our name, Ebsco. So if you're here today and you were expecting to get an update on fireplaces or fireplace accessories, I'm sorry, we're not Ebsco, we're Ebsco. Another announcement, if you were here today hoping to get an update on what prescription drug costs would be in 2019 for your company's healthcare plan, I'm sorry, we sell subscriptions, not prescriptions. So I don't have an update for you there. Although with our annual cost of prescriptions, I'd say we're in that business. We're going to be for a long time with our 5,500 employees. But it is a privilege to be here. I do hope to provide some clarity on what we do at Ebsco. I know it is somewhat confusing in our community because we are involved in so many things as a mini conglomerate. Also would like to share some of our plans for the future. But I thought I would start with telling a little story about how my career originally intersected with Ebsco Industries, and it involves our founder, Elton B. Stevens. So as Bowen mentioned, when I started my career with Ernst & Young in Birmingham, I was very fortunate on the audit side of their practice to have great clients. Ebsco Industries was a client, Drummond Company was a client, Russell Corporation was a client, and Avondale Mills in Sylacauga was a client. So I had a great client list. And Ebsco was a summer client. With a June 30 year end, it was my first audit. So when I reached the audit for the first time and the audit team was giving me some of the do's and don'ts and showing me around the company, they mentioned to me that it was not unusual for Mr. Elton B. Stevens to stop by the audit room and talk with the auditors. So a couple of weeks into the audit, Mr. Stevens stopped by. And he was a very, very kind man, was very curious to know where everyone was from. So we had a conversation, and in the course of that conversation, he mentioned that he had a blueberry farm in his hometown of Clive. Now, for those of you not familiar, Clive is about 7 miles from Louisville. And for those of you not familiar with Louisville, Louisville is about 50 miles from Dothan, and Dothan's in the southeastern part of our state. But what many of you may not know is that Elton B. Stevens had 2 twilight careers. One of those was in blueberry farming and pecan orchard farming, and the other was in banking. And so he mentioned his blueberry farm and his frustration with the lack of success. And so trying to show interest, I said, well, I have a friend who dropped out of college to start a U-Pick strawberry farm in Chilton County. And so he asked me a couple of questions about that, and then he continued with his day. And about an hour later, there was a page on the intercom, David Walker, please dial extension 1197. So knowing that that could not be a first-year staff, I ignored the message. About 15 minutes later, David Walker, please dial extension 1197. Still believing there was no way this was meant for me, I did not respond. About 15 minutes later, his assistant, Sandy Bullock, and for those of you who know Sandy, know that she was a very firm lady who did a great job in protecting Mr. Elton B. Stevens, and then his son Jim Stevens showed up at the door of the audit room, and she said, which one of you is David Walker? And I sort of just raised my hand, and she said, come with me, Mr. Stevens would like to see you in his office. So at this point, I have no idea what's going on, and I go to the corner office of our building, and I walk in, and Mr. Stevens says, I'd like to talk to your friend that's the strawberry farmer. And somewhat relieved at that point that I hadn't done something worse than introduce him to my friend who was in that business, I said, well, I'd be happy to do that. Why don't I get you his number and you can give him a call? He said, no, you don't understand. I want to see him face to face, and I want you to go with me. Be at my house at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. There were three things I did not know at that moment. One, I had no idea what to tell my audit team when I went back to the audit room. Two, I had no idea whether my friend's farm was even open tomorrow. And three, most challenging, I had no idea where Mr. Stevens lived. But we figured those things out, and I showed up at his house. One of his grandchildren went with us on that trip, and we traveled down to Clanton to the U-Pick strawberry farm. And for an hour or two, we both picked strawberries with my friend, and he peppered my friend with questions. Questions about operations, questions about strategy, questions about labor force. And I was just amazed at the humility of this great businessman at the feet of this friend of mine. From there, we traveled to Clio to the blueberry farm, and we visited his blueberry farm, and he shared with his manager of that farm what he had learned earlier in the day. We went to his pecan orchard. He cussed the pecan trees for not producing. And then from there, we had a trip back through, I believe, Alexander City. I'm not sure of this. But we went to visit someone that was in the nursing home. And it was probably that part of the trip that I remembered the most, because Mr. Stevens drove a long town car, if you've ever been in a Lincoln town car. I was in the back seat of this car. He was flying, and I don't know if we were behind or if that was his nature, but we were going very fast. He did not discriminate based on the line in the middle of the road being solid or jagged. We crossed it solid, we crossed it jagged, he didn't care. And in the back of that car, it felt like you were floating. And I just remember sitting in the back of that car thinking, if I can survive this trip, it has to be good for my career. And I did, and I'm very humbled today to work out of that same office he summoned me to 27 years ago. An amazing story that means a lot to me and glad to share with you. Now, there were a few things I learned from Mr. Stevens on this trip. One, to have a sense of urgency. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing now. There was no, we'll get to that, we'll plan it later. He wanted to do it. He had a sense of urgency about it. We did it the next day. Execution, get things done. He believed in executing, and we executed. Three, he was very humble. His desire to continuously improve his blueberry farm operation and the humility he had with this college dropout to learn was something that I'll never forget. And finally, the portion that I always tell my kids, and this is the one I tell them is the most important thing I learned from him on that trip, always wear your seatbelt. Front seat, back seat, always wear your seatbelt. So thank you for letting me share that story. I do want to talk a little bit about our current activities. I'll close those comments with talking a little bit about where we're headed in the future. To give you an overview, and some of this was shared by Bowen, Ebsco has about 5,500 employees. About 4,200 of those employees are in the U.S. About 1,600 of that 4,200 are in Alabama, and I'll speak to some of the companies that they work for. We have about 1,300 international employees, 1,000 of which are in our largest business, Ebsco Information Services, and the balance are in our Pratico Outdoor Brands Group business based in Guatemala. The company has about 2.8 or 2.9 billion in revenue, spread across about 18 different business activities. We divide those business activities into 4 areas: information services, which is our largest business; Ebsco Diversified Businesses, which is 11 different autonomous and independent businesses. I'll talk to some of those. Ebsco Realty Investments, which includes a number of different investments, both development and multifamily. And our newest addition, Ebsco Collective, which is our software as a service platform that we partnered with Dave Gray on, who's here today. And so I'll talk about some of the specifics of those businesses, but I wanted to begin by saying, while there have been many changes over the life of our 75-year company, one thing has stayed the same, and that's been our commitment. And our commitment is expressed in our mission statement, which is create positive results in the people we employ, in the businesses we build, and in the communities where we work and live. We express that on the team member side in many ways, but the most significant way we express that is through our profit sharing plan. So Ebsco contributes 15% of its before-tax profits to our retirement plan. This is not a match plan, this is a contribution or a gift to our employees, and this is averaged somewhere between 8 and 9% of their pay annually. In addition to this benefit, we provide very generous benefits on the healthcare side, but this is the benefit we're most proud of in helping our employees and team members retire with dignity. On the community side, we donate 5% of pre-tax profits to local community and charitable organizations. We've done that since Mr. Elton B. Stevens founded the 1% Club many years ago, which was a challenge to local businesses to donate 1% of their before-tax profits to charitable causes. Our efforts focus in a few areas, including education, healthcare, arts, and the environment, but we're very proud of what Ebsco does in this community. And then finally, in our businesses, we reinvest 100% of our after-tax profits back into our businesses. We don't pay dividends, we don't pay distributions. 100% of our after-tax profits are invested back in the businesses we own and in the businesses we acquire, and we're very proud of that commitment. As I mentioned earlier, the four segments of our business are Ebsco Information Services, Ebsco Diversified Businesses, Ebsco Realty Investments, and Ebsco Collective. I'm going to take a minute and talk through these, but certainly welcome questions at the end of this presentation. Ebsco Information Services is our largest business. This is the modern-day version of Elton B. Stevens' door-to-door magazine sales operation that was started in the 1940s. That business has evolved over time from selling primarily consumer magazines to both door-to-door customers as well as through reception rooms and to public libraries to selling research information in the form of books, journals, databases, and more recently software. In our software business, we represent what Google is to the open web from a search perspective. We are to the library community. So we provide a search box, as you see on the screen, where someone doing basic or advanced research can find access to over 3 billion pieces of content on our platform. So our business is essentially a platform as a service long before we had the as-a-service businesses. We had, in the last 12 months, over 800 million searches through our platform, with the most being 4 million in any given day. We are the largest provider of research information in the world through this business, with offices in over 26 countries and a sales presence in essentially every location in the world where there's higher education. So Ebsco Information Services continues to be our largest business. Looking at Ebsco Diversified Businesses, I've primarily concentrated on those businesses with a presence in Alabama. Valiant Group is our insurance brokerage, formerly known as SS Nesbitt in Birmingham, but recently rebranded. This business focuses on providing personal and commercial lines of property and casualty and other insurance coverages, as well as employee benefits. If you are looking for personal or professional insurance needs, we would love to talk to you. We have about 90 employees in this business, and we were recently recognized as one of Birmingham's best places to work, which is something we're very proud of. Luxor is a company based in the northern suburbs of Chicago. It's a workspace product solutions company. We sell standing desks, charging parts and solutions, and visual communication boards. We also ship about 75% of their business out of a location in Birmingham in the Trussville area. This business has about 80 employees in multiple locations. Ebsco Sign Group has 2 locations. One is based in Clanton, Alabama, my home, where we do production of outdoor LED signs. We also have a sales and marketing office in Sarasota, Florida. This business has about 120 employees, and we sell outdoor LED signs to the church, school, military, municipal, and business market. If your business is in need of an LED sign, we'd love to talk with you. You see where this is going. Imagine Brands is our promotional product supplier. We have locations in Mobile, Alabama, as well as in Donovan, Missouri, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and Fletcher, North Carolina. We sell logoed material to the corporate promotional market. We also have a license on the collegiate side, and we sell licensed non-apparel logoed merchandise into the college bookstore market. Franco Outdoor Brands is our outdoor consumer brands platform. It includes both a hunting and fishing division. On the hunting side, we have Code Blue, Summit Tree Stands, Moultrie Feeders, and cameras. More recently, Whitetail Institute, which is in Pent Lala, Alabama, as well as Texas Hunter, which is based in San Antonio, Texas. On the fishing side, we have about 24 brands. Some of the more recognizable brands include Rebel, Heddon, Cotton Cordell, Yum, Booyah, and of course my favorite, War Eagle. Vulcan Industries was our original manufacturing company. This company was a vertical integration. When we were in the consumer magazine business in the early part of Ebsco's business, one of the needs that we had was to provide magazine racks for our magazines to be displayed in waiting and reception rooms. So Mr. Stevens created this business, Vulcan Industries. It has evolved over time to be a custom manufacturer of store fixtures and point-of-purchase displays, serving large big box retailers like Home Depot, Walmart, Target, Dunkin' Donuts, and others. It's based in Moody, Alabama, and we have approximately 225 employees in this business. All Current Electrical is a provider of electrical parts, components, and custom assemblies. This business is headquartered in Morristown, New Jersey, with about 100 employees. They have 9 branches across the country, providing 1 to 2 day service to electrical distributors like Mayer Electric here in Birmingham across the country. On the Ebsco Realty investment side, we have essentially 3 different activities. We have development activities centered around traditional neighborhood developments. We have a multifamily platform with properties across the southeast. Our signature development is Alice Beach. Jason Comer, who's with us today, as I mentioned, was the town founder of Alice Beach. If you're not familiar with Alice Beach, it's our traditional neighborhood development and beach resort town on Highway 30A on the panhandle of Florida. We're very proud of this development. We have about 160 homes in the development now. We're very much on the front end of this development. This spring we'll be opening our fitness center called Zuma. It will actually open this month. In the summer of 2020, we will open our beach club. So we're very excited about the progress we've made at Alice Beach. Mount Laurel is also a traditional neighborhood development on Highway 41 on the east side of Birmingham, close to our corporate office. We founded the town of Mount Laurel in 1998. We have about 300 homes currently in Mount Laurel and continuing to grow. We have about 100 plus or minus additional lots to sell in that development. And then Ebsco Income Properties is our multifamily apartment investing platform. We have approximately 17 properties in that business with about 5,000 units, primarily in tertiary markets across the southeast. We also have a portfolio of undeveloped property, not listed here, that we will look to activate in the coming years. So we expect this platform to continue to evolve. And last but not least is Ebsco Collective, I mentioned earlier, which is a partnership that we have with Dave Gray. Dave joined us from Daxco in November, and our goal there is to build a platform of portfolio companies that are focused on verticals in business-to-business, mission-critical software as a service. I have mentioned in several of these how many employees we had in each of these businesses. In Ebsco Collective, we have 1. And so Dave is number 1 at Ebsco Collective, so he's looking to build a team over time. So that's a very high-level overview of some of our businesses, and hopefully that provides some clarity on how we look at our businesses. As we look forward and look to growth, we're looking to grow aggressively. We do that organically by investing in our businesses. I mentioned earlier that we reinvest 100% of our after-tax profits, and we look to do that inorganically through acquisitions. We look at both strategic acquisitions, we look at new platform acquisitions. As we look at these new platform acquisitions, we're looking at investing in them thematically. And what we'd like to do is to build a conviction around a theme and then partner with a leader, as we did with Dave with Be So Collective, to express that theme through making investments. And we'd like to do that in a way that naturally fits with who we are. So who is Ebsco? What is our DNA? We like to define that in a few areas. One, we're a long-term investor. And so some people might refer to us as being permanent capital. We're not a transactional owner. And the owner word is important because we are an owner. We're not a renter. We buy businesses to own them. We don't buy them to rent them. And so as a result of that, we have a long-term view, which means that we can balance the need for short-term achievement with making sure that we're staying true to our long-term vision. So first and foremost, we're a long-term investor. Second is we have reasonable growth and return expectations. We're looking to acquire businesses and invest around themes where these businesses have great long-term opportunity. These are durable industries and durable customers, and these are businesses that are solving problems that have existed for decades and will continue to exist for decades. The way in which the solutions are provided may change with technology, but the pain points themselves have existed and will continue to exist. And then reinvestment. We want to invest in themes where we can continue with follow-on investments. Our goal is to find themes where we have a conviction, where we have a strong leader, and then go deep in those themes through follow-on investments. And finally, we are a family-owned business, and we feel like that intangible is very important in this market in a way that it differentiates us from other investors. From a corporate perspective, in the office that we have here in Birmingham, we're looking to create value by enabling mindsets. And when we talk about mindsets in our company, we talk about being talent-driven. And you've seen some of that with Bowen's comments earlier. We're very proud to have leaders in our organization like Bowen and those who are with us today. And so we think talent trumps everything. We think that nothing changes the trajectory of a project, of a team, of a business more than talent. So we invest in talent. We look to identify, recruit, hire, and then develop and retain great talent. It's key to our model. Second is we're customer-centric. We want our businesses to have that mindset. And for us, that means that we have customer loyalty. And customer loyalty means that our customers do business with us, and they do more business with us, and they tell others to do business with us. And that comes with having customer empathy. So we want our businesses to be very sensitive to the customer experience when they work with Ebsco. We feel like we can differentiate based on that customer experience, which drives customer loyalty. We want to be growth-oriented. We want that to be part of our DNA. That's a personal and a professional responsibility. We want everyone to grow individually, and we want our businesses to grow. It's a mindset. It's something that's not incremental. It's stretch. It gives us the opportunity to radically rethink the way we do business in order to achieve stretch growth. And finally, we want to be results-focused. We're competitive. We like keeping score. We want to win. So these things are important to us. So in closing, what I would say to you is that while we are 75 years old at Ebsco, I would characterize our business as unfinished. We have really aggressive growth plans. We have a great team in place to deliver on that. And so as we press ahead, we want to keep in mind Mr. Stevens' sense of urgency. We want to execute with excellence. We want to humble ourselves and always continuously improve. And to my team in the front, buckle up. Thank you very much.
Take some questions.
Sure. Easy one.
Question. Who's got some questions? This crowd always has some questions. Eva.
So on the description of your company, there has to be an interesting structure between centralized decision-making and decentralized decision-making. So talk a little bit about how you have all of these companies with the same sort of passion you've got operating in so many different locations.
Sure, great question. So I have several of those leaders here with me today, and so they will attest to this. I believe in empowerment without abandonment. So when you look at the structure of our company and the way we're structured as a conglomerate with a corporate center and then all these businesses underneath that umbrella, it's very important that our businesses have empowerment. At the same time, we don't want them to feel abandoned, and that's where we're trying to influence them with the mindsets that I mentioned. But as they've heard me say, I believe that the local owners of our businesses need to have ownership of that business, they need to have stewardship of that business, and they need to have entrepreneurship of that business. Our business was built by a founder who believed in being entrepreneurial. And so giving that autonomy, that empowerment that allows them to be entrepreneurial is key to our success, which is why talent is so important. Without the right leadership in those businesses, we're not able to achieve those goals.
You mentioned one of your businesses was located in Guatemala. Sort of two-pronged question. One, how is the business climate in Guatemala for that business in particular? And do you see anything that the United States could be doing in Guatemala that might be helpful with the overall immigration problems coming out of Guatemala?
Sure. So I'm going to take the first question. I'm not sure I'd be prepared to answer the second one, but this gentleman in the front with the red tie can answer the second one after we conclude.
What's the question?
I'm sorry?
What's the question?
The question was regarding what has our experience been in Guatemala, and is there anything that the U.S. could be doing to better position American companies in Guatemala? Fair?
Yes.
So we've been in Guatemala for a few years now, not for a lengthy period of time. We have sourced, like many, from Asia through the years. This particular activity is in our fishing lure business within our Pratco Outdoor Brands fishing division. And so we were in China. We had an operation in Mexico as things became somewhat difficult to do business in Mexico, and because of some safety issue we had for our employees traveling from Fort Smith, Arkansas to Mexico, and for our employees in Mexico, we decided to move that operation. We had had some experience in Guatemala in the past. We moved actually the manager who was in charge of our operation in Mexico to Guatemala, so we had some continuity of leadership and some continuity of knowledge transfer, and it's been a great solution for us. We've had a very positive experience, and what we've seen operationally in that business is, as it has matured, it has begun to produce better and better results. So I'm not sure I would be qualified to answer the second part of that question, but I would say our experience has been very positive.
In your information services division, what is it like doing business in China and other countries where access to information can be restricted?
Sure. So the question is, in our information services business, what has it been like to do business in countries where there have been some restrictions on information? It's interesting because with the size of China and in that business, you would expect that to be a big pocket of growth opportunity for us. It's not been that for the reasons you mentioned. There have been some issues with them restricting access to information. That has gotten better in the last few years through some world trade intervention. In other countries like India, where you also have large populations and we do not see that same restriction, we've seen business boom. And so it definitely has an impact on that part of our business. We feel like over time, because English is the universal language of research, that those markets will become more open.
You talked about this club. You talked about a shortage of tech talent in this area. Do you recognize that, and are y'all taking part in growing that tech talent?
We are. We definitely have felt that in our business, particularly in our information services business, where we have a need for technical talent. The partnership and what we're doing with Be So Collective with Dave is an attempt to bring more technology to Birmingham. And so while we will not be restricted to only acquiring businesses in Birmingham in the SaaS space, We could relocate businesses here. We certainly would look over time to innovate here and to incubate some opportunities on the technology side. And so we're very committed to technology in Birmingham and feel it's a key component of our growth opportunity in this market. But we are struggling, as everyone is, with technology talent gaps. And we see that not only in Birmingham, but we see that in our second largest operation, which is in Boston, where the tech bench has traditionally been deeper.
I don't know if you used the words corporate culture, but you described a very distinct and admirable corporate culture. What are the challenges in transmitting that and maintaining it in a new company when you make an acquisition, particularly if they're not here in Alabama?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something my team would probably smile to see you ask, in that they've heard me say many times that culture is local. And so we have a corporate culture that relates to how we do things on our campus here in Birmingham, but each of our business units has their own culture. And we're very sensitive to the fact that when we do an acquisition, we need to understand the culture. We need to spend time understanding how decisions are made, how that culture is working to achieve the result that we're acquiring. And so we tend to have a somewhat patient approach to integration. And so with any acquisition, there are some areas where we're looking to more aggressively integrate, but we also try to balance the sense of urgency in integrating with the patience that we know is important for culture to not be disrupted. But we sometimes acquire businesses where culture needs to change, and sometimes part of that acquisition strategy is to make some changes in leadership to improve the culture. So it's very situational. What we don't try to do is impose on the things we acquire or the things that we own an Ebsco unified, holistic culture. I think that detracts from that empowerment, entrepreneurialism that needs to happen by a local team owning a vision, owning a mission, having their own values, and then pursuing that as a team.
Yeah, in the very back.
Oh, I'm really interested in your hands-off, I know it's not totally hands-off, but between the motor company and all the affiliates in terms of leadership development. Do you have any centralized programs that just filter out and they can fine-tune it to their culture, or do you just let them develop their own systems of leadership development?
Yes, good question. So we actually implemented, I think 2 years ago now, something we call Leading the Ebsco Way, which is a leadership development program that's aimed at all elements of the spectrum, from leading oneself to leading a business. And so what we try to do from a corporate perspective is to provide services that create value and enable our businesses. So we're trying to, and my service center leaders, some of which are here today, know we sort of categorize what we do from corporate in three ways. One, is it something that we view to be mandatory? And we try to keep that list as short as possible. We don't want to have a heavy hand with our businesses. Two, is it a service that creates economies of scale? So something that we can leverage across multiple businesses. And then three, is it value creating? And we're most focused on number three. We want to do things that create value. Things like leadership development and talent in general, talent management in general, are things that we feel like from the center we can provide value, create value, and provides a resource to our businesses that when you're managing a middle market to lower middle market size business, you don't necessarily have access to. So being able to bring big company opportunities like leadership development to a lower size or smaller size company, I should say, is one opportunity we see that we can create value.
I think we've all heard versions of the founding of Ebsco and how it initially developed under Elton B. Stevens' leadership. Could you just briefly recount that so we have the true story, not the one that may have evolved?
Not the other stories I told. So the true story of Ebsco's founding, Mr. Stevens was in college at Birmingham Southern, and he had an opportunity between years to go up to the Michigan area to sell magazines door to door. So he did that and he had success, and so he went back again. He graduated from Birmingham Southern, went to the University of Alabama to law school, and continued that success of selling magazines door to door to the point that he decided to be a selling manager. So he hired some of his classmates in law school, folks like George Wallace, to sell on his magazine subscription door-to-door sales operation team. And the story goes that when he graduated from law school, he had an offer from a law firm here in Birmingham to join and pursue a career in the legal field, but he was making too much money selling magazines door to door, so he opted to stay in business. And for that, all of us from Ebsco are very thankful. That is the short version.
All right, last one.
Yeah.
What happened to the blueberry farm?
So we still own the blueberry farm and the pecan orchard, and so it's still part of the family. He sold those blueberries. True story. So this is arguably one of the most successful businessmen in Alabama history. In those twilight careers of farming and banking, he was selling those blueberries locally here in Birmingham to grocery stores to resell, which just amazes me with the humility that comes with doing that at the success level that he had achieved. Truly amazing. Something we're very proud of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great update and some great stories. Thanks for being here today. You will make a donation in your name to the tornado relief effort in the county, so thank you for it. There you go. Okay, upcoming programs, very excited. Just a quick rundown. Next week, John Turner, CEO of Regions Bank. Needs no introduction. Really excited to hear from John. Week after that, Youth of the Year Scholarship Awards with our guest speaker, the new president of Birmingham Southern, Daniel Coleman. Another great speaker. Excited about that. Wednesday, April 24th, we will meet on Wednesday, joint with Rotary, to hear from Target CEO Brian Cornell. Excited about that. April 30th, Ray Watts, UAB president. And then finally, May 7th, Dr. Lisa Herring, superintendent of Birmingham City Schools. So, got a great lineup. Hope you'll keep coming. Thanks for being here today. We are adjourned.